It is working. Good morning, everyone. Hope you had a nice buna and are now ready to get into the content of today's kind of deep dive sessions. And I'll start with saying I'm really pleased on behalf of the International Telecommunication Union and our regional office here in Addis Ababa to be sharing some thoughts with you on digital infrastructure and what perhaps we have ahead of us with regards to this to keep in mind for our discussions throughout today and also tomorrow. And Minister Molla, it's a real pleasure, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen. So, in order to harness these new opportunities and innovations in Ethiopia and in Africa, it is important to know what it is that is really holding us back. What is it really? So, in several events already this year, such as those held around the African Union Summit, the importance of resilient and sustainable infrastructure has been emphasized. And also, be this energy infrastructure, roads, rail, ports, food, and agro systems, and really to ensure that, and then, of course, digital infrastructure. And there is a need to attract and boost investments in such systems and infrastructure to unlock opportunities on the continent. So I'd like to spend the next few minutes with you to unpack the opportunities related to our digital infrastructure and share some ideas with you of what could lie ahead. So, digital infrastructure is really at the cornerstone for building resilient digital economies and is a critical lever for achieving the sustainable development goals. As much as 70% of those targets rely on some kind of digital aspect. So let me see if I can just change the slide because I was encouraged to use slides. Oops. There. Oh, there we go. So if we start by looking then at those challenges that lie ahead of us, ITU's 2024 facts and figures, which includes insights concerning connectivity in sub-Saharan African countries, we see that 38% of people were estimated to be online in 2024, increasing from 37% in 2023. And of this online population, 35% are women and 43% are men. And more youth on the continent, and youth here we look at those between 15 and 24, are more connected than ever before at 53% in 2024. Now that means that still globally we have about two-thirds of the population who lacks access to internet at sufficient speeds. And this issue is even more pronounced in low and middle income countries across the globe. And that really means the majority of our African countries. What will it take to get everyone connected if we talk about the investments that are needed in infrastructure and connectivity? Well, we have made some high level estimates that in order to close the connectivity gap by 2030, this is globally, we would need about 1.6 trillion US dollars. And this is an kind of an initiative that we have launched together with international and regional development finance community and over 40 organizations representing, I think many of you here as well, investors, technology companies, governments, and civil society. And we call it the Digital Infrastructure Investment Initiative. And here we're really trying to identify innovative financing mechanisms and instruments to maximize the impact of digital infrastructure investment. And this initiative has had the support of the G20 Digital Economy Working Group under the presidency of Brazil, and is now also being supported by South Africa. And I will share a little bit about what it is that we have done in this study. We asked three main questions. How big is the gap in financing to connect everyone worldwide adequately to digital communications? What are the main challenges faced by countries in closing those connectivity and financing gaps? and what financing mechanisms and instruments are available to unlock digital infrastructure investments, and to understand that connectivity gap that I was talking about, and what does it really mean to be adequately connected. We defined connectivity for all as meaning wireless or fixed connections about above 20 megabits per second. And we then focused in our estimates, well, what does this take uh, to ensure connectivity for 100% of all people by 2030? So it's a big ambitious goal there. So you'll also be seeing some big numbers here on the table. But let me go into then how could we go about closing the connectivity gap. So we identified five key drivers to reduce the disparity in connectivity between high income and lower income countries with a mix of different technologies. And I think that's really important as well. We're really technology neutral here, and we need to make use of all the technologies we have today, but also those that will come up that are ahead of us. So those 5 points are as follows: building out new fixed broadband in urban areas, and with this aiming to increase new fixed connections by 18%. Expanding wireless networks, including mobile and fixed wireless and satellite, by 32%, mainly to connect those in rural areas. Expanding the backbone networks by approximately 1.7 million kilometers of fiber globally. And this is really a lot. And it means around going from Addis here 42 times around the world. That's the kind of length in fiber we would need to deploy for the backbone networks. The fourth one being raising the capacity of data centers in low and lower middle income countries, and boosting the capacity of high performing data centers in upper and middle income countries to really support those future data requirements. And this means really across the board, all countries, but investing in things that make sense as a starting point. So the estimate of 1.6 trillion that I mentioned earlier really includes both the capital as well as the operating expenditures for implementing all those five drivers to address the connectivity gap. Moving forward, uh, what do we know about the infrastructure challenges then at the country level, and how can we assess those challenges in a meaningful way? So, together with the partners, we established a country assessment framework to identify the challenges that individual countries face, and to initiate then this multi stakeholder discussion on everyone's contribution to closing that connectivity gap. And just to note, this country assessment framework is not intended to be a scoring instrument or any static reference tool or an index or anything. Instead, it is a useful tool in that it provides an illustrative set of components that stakeholders then can modify, amend, refine, simplify, and supplement to suit their specific country context and local investment opportunities. And also, we know that each country is at a different level of digital development. So it's really also take that into account. And the goal is to establish a foundation for having that multi stakeholder dialogue to bring the partners in with their contributions. And to apply this framework in the countries, there were there were five, I would say, key challenges that we see emerging across different countries. And I just want to mention a little bit about those because they really show that we are facing some of the same challenges. Maybe the solutions are very specific to a country context. One was demand fragmentation, which increases the perception that universal connectivity projects are not economically viable. The second one was that there were some core infrastructure gaps, and this included insufficient backbone and the lack of data centers. The third one being that there were unclear or unimplemented digital policies and plans, and then they were then backed with some capacity constraints. Why did we put in place such great strategies and plans, and then doing assessments further down the line, we were not really implementing what we had said that we were going to implement. And the fourth one was project execution risk, which can really be when we're talking about executing infrastructure related projects that require quite specialized technical capabilities. So that was also something that we could see across countries. And then finally, country risk, which is really a major roadblock for investment in developing market. So how these challenges then materialize really still depends on the country conditions. And we can also, I think, all relate back to projects that we have seen, have been part of in Ethiopia, maybe also in parts of Ethiopia or in other countries. So that really differences between countries, but we also see differences between projects in rural, urban areas, and so on. But even with those varying contexts, the methodology can help and focus a wide range of stakeholders on the 2030 connectivity targets. So to this background, some potential innovative financing mechanisms and instruments to unlock digital investments have emerged. And I'll just share some of those that can help then build out Ethiopia's, the world's, and Africa's digital infrastructure. So if we look at finance and operating models together, we have a consideration of a platform for pooled digital infrastructure investments. And this would then be to support also small and medium-sized infrastructure ventures and ISPs, for example. We could also consider infrastructure deployments beyond the digital sphere. So bringing here together of investments in different types of infrastructure, let's say roads, railways, utilities, and then consider this together with digital infrastructure. So really looking at the full value chain when putting forward investment propositions. And then also one thing that came up that could be useful is to tie measurements of impact to sector targeted outcomes, be this in education, be this in manufacturing, and then align the different investment opportunities to that. And then also really this collaboration between financial institutions, governments, and the private sector to design financing and operational models. And also on the opposite scale, we saw that development finance institutions could also make some upstream interventions to mitigate for currency risk and ensure that there is funding lined up to when there are good projects that need funding, so that we don't wait to have a good project before we fund. So those kind of things came up. And I really hope that these notes have spurred your interests. Details on the methodology can be found in a new publication that we just released a couple of weeks back on the Digital Infrastructure Investment Initiative, closing the digital infrastructure investment gap by 2030. But what is clear across the board here is that every stakeholder will need to engage to unlock investments and close the connectivity gap. So governments, private investor, technology and digital companies, financial institutions, and organizations like ITU, regional organizations as well, all have a role to play to catalyze these investments in digital infrastructure. So with that, I wish to close these initial remarks this morning, and really I wish you a very constructive conference. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christine. Can you take a few questions from the audience? We have time for a few questions in audience. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. We can take about 3 questions from the audience before we move on to the next section. Anyone have a question, just raise your hand and we'll get you a mic over here. Christine, you mentioned one very important thing, which is digital agendas. What are some tips you have for countries on how to come up with an effective digital agenda? How should it be participatory, for example, things of that sort?
Thank you, Dr. Rao. I think we have already seen the evolution from national broadband plans now to digital transformation strategies, which of course has ICTs and digital at the core, but it also has those interlinkages with what is happening in the different sectors, other sectors, priority sectors. So I think that is important when looking at the strategies. Yes, there are good lessons learned. Let's build on those, but everything really needs to be brought back into the national ambitions, national targets and vision, and then build on that. And one important thing I think is that it's coming up when we are supporting countries on their digital transformation journeys, is that the digital the capacity component, the human resources, that needs to be really built from the very get-go. And also, if we have ambitions to do things on data, make sure that you are training your data scientists, have them in all the ministries and agencies up front now, so that you're ready for the years to come.
That's a very good tip. Questions, comments from the audience, please. Anyone have a question, comment, or a suggestion? This is a good time to ask before Christine leaves us. So, anyone have a question, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, my last question for you is when you look ahead to the year ahead, how optimistic are you that things are progressing on the continent, or you think AI is thrown everyone off guard, things of that sort?
I'm always optimistic, and I see opportunities everywhere. And I think that's what I see also when I have been across Ethiopia, maybe less now than before, but the opportunities are certainly there. And there is such a willingness, I think, to learn, but also to do. So, really, it's about taking the talking to the doing in all these initiatives. But no, I'm very optimistic. Thank you.
Fantastic. Lifelong learning, lifelong doing. That's all we have to do. Thanks so much, Christine. A big round of applause, please, for Christine Sun from the ITU. And I guess we can share the presentation with the delegates afterwards. Yeah, fantastic. Great. Thank you so much. So, with that, we move on to our next panel discussion. Our first panel for the day is on AI practices and policies. As we heard very well from the opening sessions, this is the age of AI. And just when you thought you had your act together in terms of telecom and ICTs and so on, along comes this curveball, this AI thingy, and all of us have to have a strategy for AI. So let me invite Brooke Sevenet to please come up on stage. Brooke is an IT consultant who is an expert in this space, has been in here at the previous events as well. He's going to be moderating this session, and along with him is going to be joining. Let me invite Melkar Girma to please come up on stage. Melkar Girma is the COO of Shega Media and Technologies. Melkar, will you also please come up on stage? Joining them also is Trilok Debi Singh, Director of IT from the ICT Authority of Mauritius. You heard him in the opening session. He's going to be with us again. Please come up on stage. And also, let me ask Atif Jamal, Acting Chief Technology and Information Officer at Safaricom, to please come up on stage. So we have Brooke, Melka, Trilok, and Atif to take us through the next. We have some extra time, so we can go a bit more than 45 minutes if necessary. So, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause, please, for our first opening panel of the day, and this time on one of the most exciting topics of the era, which is the rise of the age of AI. So, Brooke, over to you. You have a good 45 minutes to run through this. Let me give you this mic.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, dear panelists. A brief introduction has been made by Madan, but to brief about your achievements and your current affiliations, 1 minute round first.
Thank you, Brooke and Dr. Madan. My name is Melka. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Shagga Media and Technologies PLC. Shagga is an information service and technology company working in elevating decision making across Africa with the use of technology, data, and insights. Looking forward to our panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. My name is Atif Jamal. I'm acting CTIO for Safaricom. My responsibility is the Safaricom network. Safaricom. My passion is these days application of AI in our business. And I have formal training on AI and machine learning as well. So we are trying to apply it within our business. And
Good morning again, everyone. So my name is Trilok Debi Singh. I work for the ICT Authority, which is the ICT regulatory agency in Mauritius. As such, we oversee the regulation in the telecom sector, but also as a converged regulator, we also solve into cybersecurity issues. And one of the main components nowadays in terms of cybersecurity will definitely be AI.
Great. Keep the mic and let's come this way. So, a question to all of you. What notable use cases do you see around AI and machine learning, specifically in the African context?
Yes, in fact, AI, given the pervasive nature of AI, we have to see AI in a very bird's eye view, meaning that it has incidence in all the sectors. In Mauritius, we had developed a strategy back in 2018 right? It focus on the issues where AI can be used in the different sectors of the economy. But now, in 2024, there are many loopholes have been identified in this strategy, meaning that there has been a readiness assessment being taken up in Mauritius, whereby there was a need to look AI from the ethical angle. So the focus is not on implementing AI from a technical perspective, but to look at it by taking into consideration all the risks, all the principles that have to be to adhere to in order that AI is being implemented in a coherent and safe manner.
Right. Can I be heard? Okay. Look, for me, it's a powerful tool that is available to us, and we are still figuring out a lot of use cases. I mean, one thing I'm passionate about here is, I see there's a huge potential is, you know, preservation of the heritage. So, in the context of Ethiopia, there are many local languages. Okay, and uh, you know, there's a concerted effort needed. Okay, to preserve that language, to develop those languages. So, the new large language models that are on the offer, freely available. I mean, Facebook, one example. They have a very exciting model called, no language left behind. Very fancy name. It's a model for these low resource languages, like Urdu, where I'm coming from, Pakistan, or Amharic, where the data is very less, training data is very less. So a huge potential is to uh, you know uh, preserve African languages. Okay, that's what I see. I mean, another great potential I see is in telehealth, because I mean, you may not, I mean, if you can I be heard? Okay, now can I can hear myself back. So look, I'm not going to repeat what I've said, but huge potential, very powerful tool. We all, the policymakers, the industry, the academia, we all need to figure out what more can be done. There are already a lot of use cases in place.
Um, Speaking of AI use case across Africa, I think uh, some of them are sector specific, some are cross sectoral. If we look at some of the countries that has advanced in terms of AI, for example, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and notably Ethiopia, we see some use case around agriculture in terms of precision agriculture, in terms of climate action, as well as in terms of energy. Um, it differs across different countries, but if you look at South Africa, the energy-related use cases of AI are more advanced, whereas in Nigeria and Kenya, and to some extent in Ethiopia, agriculture and healthcare-related AI use cases are more relevant. One unique AI use case that I noticed that's working across more than 20 countries in Africa is and it's cross-sectoral and specifically on digital inclusion. I don't know if you know it. It's called YAMO, specifically meant for those people with featured phones and not really connected to the internet. It's an AI use case that will that's promoting providing information on different sectors, not specifically on agriculture or healthcare or as such, but on all sectors using voice recorders and things like that. So I see lots of use cases being promoted across different countries depending on the advancement of those specific countries. Yeah.
Okay. Going to specific use cases in your areas, Malka, continuing with you directly, what opportunities do you see since you are in the digital finance space? What specific opportunities do you see there? And what are you guys doing in that regard? But this is probably from your previous experience.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think we can look at from two perspectives: finance in general and digital finance or digital finance, digital payment in particular. There are lots of use cases being promoted around finance in terms of risk management, right? So in terms of customer services, in terms of fraud protection or fraud detection. Those are some of the use cases that financial institutions are adopting across the continent. And specific to maybe digital payments, we see some AI use cases around, personalized customer services, credit scoring, loan origination, and things like that. So it depends on whether those specific sectors are advanced in that specific country or not. But you see, some use cases being introduced across the finance sector in general.
Okay. And going to Atif, you've touched a bit about onboarding when you were mentioning about use cases, but specific to telcos, what opportunities do you see regarding network optimization, customer experience, and so on? And considering telcos have huge amount of data, I'm sure you are in a dilemma in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, we are uniquely placed. So yes, we have large amount of data about, about customer, their behavior, their mobility patterns. So um, in especially for our domain, one thing that we are focusing on is operational efficiency. That AI, in my opinion, is going to transform the telecom operations. So the way we used to manage telecom operations is very human resource heavy. So we need to hire a lot of people to maintain the network that we have, right? In the in the it needs to be always available. It needs to, we need to be able to fix our issues really fast. And for us, one potential um, uh, area is application of AI in telecom operations. That's going to remarkably change how we operate our network and and improve the quality of service that we offer to our customer. So that I think is a huge opportunity for us.
Coming to Trilog, Mauritius has developed its AI policy. A lot of nations might take note from that. Ethiopia probably will. So tell us about the approach, the processes you've gone through in developing this policy in your country.
Okay. So as was mentioned previously, can you hear me? Yeah. So we had an initial strategy with this back to 2018. But then in November 2023, we benefited from a readiness assessment that was undertaken by the UNESCO. So the purpose of this readiness assessment was to assess the previous strategy. And as I was mentioning, several loopholes have been identified. In fact, based on the recommendation of this readiness assessment exercise carried out, the government of Mauritius is coming up with an updated AI policy during this financial year. Now, what will be the policy about? Again, as I was mentioning, the main focus was to develop a framework to ensure the ethical use of AI in Mauritius. What does that mean? AI is here. We have to make the most out of it, but we need at the same time to mitigate the risk associated with the AI. And what does that mean in turn? That there should be some fundamental principles around which this AI policy should be built. The first one is in the secure, safe use of AI system. The second was in terms of transparency. An AI system should be transparent, should be explainable. There should be a degree of fairness in the use of the AI, and there also should be kind of governance and accountability framework associated with the use of AI, meaning that there should be an apex agency which oversees the supply and use of AI system in the country. But at the same time, there should be an accountability framework that should be developed along the side. And last but not least is the issue of contestability and redress. What I mean by that is if somebody feels that they have been given the wrong decision by an AI system, they should have the possibility to contest this decision and ask for redress. So the policy will revolve around these pillars so that when we use AI, it's a ecosystem whereby everybody can benefit, but in a regulated manner, bearing in mind that regulation will not stifle innovation, and that is the light touch regulation. In fact, the approach that we are thinking about in Mauritius in terms of implementing these kind of policies is a kind of decentralized approach, right? Recently, we came up with a piece of legislation in terms of cybersecurity in 2021. And the interesting part in that, which will be applicable, I think, for AI, is the decentralized approach. In this piece of legislation, each sector regulator is responsible for cybersecurity oversight in its sector, whereby there's also a national cybersecurity agency which has the mandate to oversee what are the CII sectors in Mauritius. Once this is done, it is the sector regulator that has the mandate to oversee cybersecurity measures into each sector. Similarly, I think that in the AI realm, when we're going to implement the policy within the legal and regulatory framework, there will be some kind of decentralized approach, meaning that there should be a kind of risk-based ecosystem, high risk, low risk, no risk, or completely out of question to put AI. This kind of framework has to be defined in each sector. And within each sector, the regulator has to come up with the granular provisions of ensuring that AI is being used in a safe and copyright manner.
I'm sending easy and basic questions here. So please, the audience, prepare for any questions from your side because this is a very hot topic and we can learn a lot from our panelists. One question for all of you. It's a new sector. There is a lot of innovations going on at a fast pace. So talent comes to the picture. So what do you suggest that countries, organizations do, even individuals, to ramp up their skills, to ramp up talent at a larger scale or at an individual scale? Let's start with Malka and we go to that direction.
Thanks again, Brooke. So, given that the potential is huge, of course, AI talent becomes a concern, right? Last time I checked, the the role of Africa in the AI market globally is around 2.5%, which is nonsense, right? But it's predicted that it could add about 2.9 trillion US dollar into Africa's GDP by 2030. That's huge, right? From what we are today. So speaking about what it requires in terms of talent is critical. And with that, we can think of two things: the AI users as well as AI builders. For AI users, mere digital skills and literacy is no longer enough. Additional skills are required, including prompt engineering and things like that. And for AI builders, the obvious technical skills like data analysis and things like that or engineering are also not enough. Additional domain knowledge is required on specific sectors, whether it is agriculture, healthcare, whether it is agronomy or climatology, things like that. So advancing Africa's talent across those all domains is critical. But one key message I would say is the mere presence of talent by itself is also not enough. Our capability to collect, process, store data, and the computational power or computational infrastructure that is existent across the continent is critical. That's where the data centers come in. So to ramp up Africa's talent in terms of AI, two things are critical, I would say. One, to make sure that all institutions that are training, they use to incorporate these kind of elements in their curriculum, and maybe it's also a new area of opportunity for training institutions to provide very critical skills that are required to use and build AI platforms, as well as companies need to also look at for platforms or capabilities in terms of computational infrastructure, data collection, processing, and analysis.
Atif,
Yes.
talent.
I mean, first of all, let me acknowledge that there's a lot of talent on the offer in the market. So we hire a lot of machine learning talent from universities like Addis Ababa Technical University. And I'm not stepping on any inter-university rivalry, but talent is there in a country like Ethiopia. And young boys and girls joining us, they are doing wonders and making us and their universities proud. But it needs to be accelerated. In what's machine learning? Machine learning is basically elegant mathematical equations. That's what machine learning is. So the the revolution needs to start from elementary school, from high school, secondary school. This is the knowledge of calculus, linear algebra, right? So there has to be an intentional effort at a high school level to teach mathematics in the context of AI and machine learning. That needs to change, right? So when we were in high school, we would not know what these funny symbols would mean if you go back 30 years ago, but now high school students needs to know that whatever they're learning right now is going to really impact uh, a few years later. uh, and then uh, besides mathematics, the second challenge would be to bring domain expertise closer uh, to the AI and machine learning expertise. For example, I mean, if you recall, the 2024 Nobel Prize went to of physics and chemistry went to the discoveries done through AI and machine learning. So basically, AI and machine learning won Nobel Prize in chemistry and physics. So how do we bring medical researchers closer to AI and machine learning researchers, or physics researchers closer? That's the second challenge at the university level that we need to figure out. West is doing it really well, but I mean, how do we do it in the education institutions in Africa? So this is something we need to to fix, sort out.
Let's relook.
So in Mauritius, one of the outcome of the strategy that was devised in 2018 was the creation of a agency which is known as the Mauritius Emerging Technology Council. And this agency oversees all the application of emerging technologies in Mauritius, including AI. And in the context of the forthcoming AI policy, they carried out a survey in January this year. So the outcome of the survey, which was done across 22 sectors of the economy, was that 70% of organizations were already using AI, right? But on the other hand, one major weakness identified was in terms of capacity building. Yes, 70% of them were consumers of AI. But in terms of building the talent locally, there's a need to come up with once more a coherent framework within this AI policy. What I mean by that is that, as my colleague mentioned, it should start within the school curriculum, university school curriculum itself. But this doesn't suffice. Government has a role to play in that as creating incentives. There should be more profound partnership between the university and industry so that they work on practical use cases where the benefit of AI can be seen, can be assessed concretely. And lastly, I think that the government also, in terms of capacity building, should encourage a startup to come up with AI project within a sandbox mode, within incubators, because this will create a feedback loop in terms of getting the capacity building used in Mauritius.
Great. To the fun part, questions from the audience. I'm sure you have a lot. Please raise your hands and then we'll send out mics.
Thank you very much.
Introduce yourselves as you pose the questions.
Okay. My name is Eposif Fridandi. I work with the African Union Commission. And my question is to Mr. Traylock. And it's just tell me, how can organizations ensure safety and transparency with the use of AI while mitigating risk such as bias, misinformation, and ethical concerns when incorporating AI into their systems and also decision-making process? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. In terms of security and safety, I believe that with the use of AI, there should be a kind of risk assessment framework, which is done on a recurrent basis to ensure that during the AI system life cycle itself, that the risk are being assessed on a permanent basis. So ensuring the safety and security, depending on where the AI is being, AI system is being used, it will be specific for the regulator of the in this specific sector to ensure that the risk assessment measures are put in place. Now, in terms of transparency, I believe that this is a question that is being addressed not only in Mauritius but on the international scene, whether AI algorithm should become transparent. I personally believe that this should be the case, and this should be explainable, meaning that if an AI system is giving an output, a decision, this should be explainable to everybody, to the end user. So, because at the end of the day, what we want is an AI system which is used, which creates trust. Unless and until we have this kind of measure in place, this kind of safeguard in place, there will be reticence, there will be a barrier to the adoption of AI. Is that okay?
But related to that, Trilok, the data on which they train the AI should also be transparent.
Absolutely, you have a perfect point. In fact, when the UNESCO made the readiness assessment exercise, one of the weaknesses identified was the lack of policy for data sharing. This in turn means that access to open data set, which is sanitized, was missing. So there was one request for government to come up with an open sharing policy, so that when we were talking, like in Mauritius, one use case is Maya. Maya is a Mauritian AI agent, which the government has deployed since 2023. And the purpose of this chatbot, which is AI-based, is to ensure citizen engagement for the use of public services. So they can interact with Maya either in writing, in English or French, but also on a conversational basis. And the next phase of Maya is to ensure that they can do so in the native Creole language of Mauritius. Right.
Great. I think we got one more question there. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Johannes. I am the business development manager at Grant Thornton, Ethiopia. So mine is not just a specific question; it's more of like a discussion point. So when it comes to AI replacing a lot of jobs, like conventional jobs that we have right now, as we know, the population is right now increasing exponentially almost everywhere. I just want to discuss about the risk factors about AI replacing, conventional jobs and more or less the skill sets that most of us have right now and the upcoming generation are becoming more and more obsolete. So I'd like to know your viewpoint about this. I'm sure everybody here has watched the movie The Matrix. And at the end, basically, it's AI replaced everyone's, the usefulness of the employments. So I just want to know your thought about that. Thank you.
Great question. Science fiction is becoming reality very soon. So, what are your thoughts on
This is
AI
to all
taking
of
over
you.
jobs? Yeah.
Look, the immediate challenge is, you know, people who know AI knowledge, who have AI knowledge, replacing people who don't have it. I mean, there will be a new digital economy after AI. Uh, uh, I mean, we should not be afraid of this change. It's just that we need to get better at it, adopting it. So yes, there is a definite concern. I fully agree with you, but I think in short term, the biggest challenge is, our jobs will be replaced by people who know how to use AI. Let's get better at using AI.
Yeah, feel free to add on it.
Yes, uh, definitely you are right. But then, if we look at the bigger picture, right? Depending on the sector of application, there will be some sectors that will cause job displacement in terms of manual jobs, in terms of low administrative jobs that can be easily replaced by AI. This is where the policy that I was mentioning has to put in place that in this eventuality, these organizations that are using AI for this purpose has to put in place transition plans. This should become mandatory in the law. But there are other sectors, as mentioned by my colleague, where AI will create new opportunities also, right? In terms of research, in terms of in the health sector, right? They will benefit the end user. There will be a transformative agent which will assist users in doing their job. So on the overall, there are the downside, but there are also the advantages in the implementation of AI.
I just want to second what you have just said. I think there will be shifting of jobs, uh, but we need to be prepared to utilize those. It won't be just replacing all the jobs. There will definitely be shifting of jobs. Our institutions, companies needs to be prepared, prepare their workforces. I'm sure you have heard about the big tech companies starting upskilling programs for lots of their employees. It's just that we need to prepare our current workforce to be able to use AI as jobs are also shifting instead of just being replaced. I just wanted to add that.
Brooke, you can add your own insights as well. I'm sure you have an answer to that.
Okay, if there are no more questions, if there is time, I see
Yeah,
hands being raised.
we have many hands up
Yeah.
here. Hang on.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, maybe one for each. My name is Dr. Naola Diso. I am an advisor at the National Bank of Ethiopia. Uh, question one each. Malka, I think I'll begin with you. Local context-aware content, right? This machine learning, language models use years, 1,000 years of content that was created for the model. I think we're behind as a continent. I don't believe we can use any version of LLM in Africa, right? How are we gonna mitigate that? Otherwise, we'll be missing out. For my colleague from Safaricom, social networking, addictive applications, modifications, and to the point where social engineering is simple for this multinational institutions, and the uses for some of them are used. Uh, should we limit or outright ban social networking related, because AI is becoming very intrusive, at least for schools and maybe younger use? Should we do that? For my colleague, is in any machine learning, right? At least there are three components to it. One is mathematics, as my colleague was saying, pure mathematics, right? That's one. Second one is computer science, being able to program, write code. The third one is domain knowledge, right? Is it economics, accounting, medical, or what have you? You have to have these three pieces in place. From experience, is it easier to teach the domain expert the language or programming in computer science and mathematics, or is it easier to teach the mathematician the domain? Otherwise, will be kill will be scarce for the continents such as Africa. Should we combine this trisection of domain into one so that we're accelerating the utilization?
Okay, I think it's not directed to any, it's to all of them, right? So, shoot.
Thank you for the question. Now, local context, right? So, I think uh, there are lots of data that has been accumulated over years across institutions, both private and government. Um, unless we increase our capability to, because these data are in silos, unless we increase our capability to collect, store, analyze whatever data is available, um, the presence of data by itself may not means something, right? So I think we need to encourage our institutions and the government need to encourage companies, startups that are striving to do this. There are a few companies in Ethiopia, I know, for example, that are trying to collect data across it could be primary or secondary data across different institutions. Our efforts need to encourage that. I would say. Maybe the second thing is there are also companies that are trying to embed AI into their processes, uh, and there are a few companies that are also trying to do this. I mean, building AI itself for different use cases. So our financing mechanisms, our partnerships, and efforts, even at policy level, need to encourage these dynamics. Otherwise, obviously, we'll be left behind. Uh, um, yeah, that's what I would say.
Maybe for the social network, limiting, banning, that it will be the right person.
I mean, I would love to answer his third question.
Okay.
But look, social media banning, I can only answer on a personal level. And you look at the kids of Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. They have made the world's largest social media network. They don't let their kids use the social media. So yes, in my personal opinion, there are definitely negative side effects of the overuse of social media. But at the same time, uh, this now we have a huge knowledge base. Okay, the concepts around calculus, linear algebra, machine learning, scientific topics that were previously very difficult for us to understand. Now there's tons and tons of information available on YouTube and all those online courses. So yes, we can always make best use of social media, and of course there is some limitation required for the use of social media when it comes to children. So
So let me give you my take as a regulator on the issue of social media. A few years ago in Mauritius, because of the issue of harmful content on social media that is totally unregulated, and in Mauritius we had the added difficulty that these content were in the native Creole language of Mauritius. So whenever we contacted the social media owners, there was no response. Most of the time, no response. So we came up with a public consultation exercise to see how we could address the problem and how we could get into solving the problems that pertain to harmful content. One big lesson learned is that even we did only a public consultation, there was a major pro. So banning the social media is out of question. So this is not the solution. But then what we are saying on the international front, those countries where those social media owners have a point of presence, there are some legislation that are coming in place that are putting the burden on the administrator of the social media to ensure cyber security measures into media that is posted on social media. Now, another issue that I've seen that is starting to appear is with generative AI, right? This synthetic content further accentuate this problem. But then I saw that a few countries are coming up with the idea of putting watermark on synthetic media that is posted online, especially on social media. Hopefully, this will address the problem. But unfortunately, us countries which in Africa where these social media owners that don't have a point of presence, we will have to bear the consequences. But then our major tool, as my colleague mentioned, is in terms of capacity building, in terms of making people aware of what is correct, what is not correct. But then banning social media, definitely out of question.
Okay, we are wrapping up. So, final insights, points you didn't have the chance to mention. This is the time. And plus, during these coming 2 days, if there is any specific area that the audience can reach out to you during the networking sessions, you can also mention those. Thank you. Let's start with Malka, Atif, and then Trilok.
Okay. Um, just to add one specific point on the AI talent. Um, even if there are talents in terms of AI, for example, in Ethiopia, I would say most of them are being used for initiatives outside of the continent. And part of the reason could be lack of financing, and most of the venture capital funds are going outside of Africa. So most of the startups around this are not being empowered in that regard. That could be the reason. So I just wanted to add that specific point on the talent related discussion we had. Apart from that, so as I mentioned earlier, I work for Shaga Media and Technologies, uh, and we do lots of platforms using AI. Uh, if there are companies that are willing to open their data and monetize it through partnership, we have the open data partnership modalities that anyone can reach out to us, and we can partner and build together platforms. These platforms are cross-sectoral, mostly in areas related to finance, digital finance, education, healthcare, and agriculture. Those are some of the areas we focus on, and the main thing is to elevate decision making with the use of integrated media, data, and intelligence. So those are the points I have. Thank you.
Great. Atif?
Uh, the roadmap for the AI revolution, or this harnessing the new wave we're calling it today, very well stated in the AI paper, AI policy paper by released in June 2020, um, government of Ethiopia. Very well mentioned. First building block for this is a robust, all pervasive towards telecom infrastructure. That's where we fit in. So I mean, I'm proud to say that Safaricom is offering the best internet and data connectivity network. But we need to do a lot more. There needs to be further fiberization of the country. There needs to be, further, we need to bring network to the far-flung communities, to the remote area, to the rural community. This is the first step, the first building block. We can talk all about AI, talk all about, but we need to provide digital connectivity to everyone across the country. It was mentioned IT. Second is, access to compute resources. That's also in the paper, right? I mean the computing hub that government needs to support, and the private companies needs to build. So we need to offer. We need to build GPU infrastructure, so that all the ideas that are generated in academia, in in the private industry, can be realized as well. So these are the two basic points. We are doing our bit. We are trying to provide the digital inclusion in the but as I said, a lot needs to.
So one interesting feature that I noted recently, which is particularly interesting for African countries, is the issue, the advent of DeepSeek, right? The lesson learned from that can be very beneficial to the African countries, the sense that DeepSeek, they use the term frugal innovation, that is doing more with less, right? So with this new type of AI system, there's a shift in paradigm in terms of thinking that AI is dependent on computing power, extensive computing power. The paradigm shift is that doing more with less means that you can have less computing power, but then you optimize on the use of the hardware, on the use of the software, on the use of the data flow, better data flow. And this can be a lesson for us in terms of African countries where we lack this infrastructure in terms of where we will build AI. So I think that in terms of whatever policy we have in place, capacity building in terms of gearing our resources toward optimization, right, of these kind of technical resources should become a fundamental component into leapfrogging our country towards adoption of AI.
It's very true. DeepSeek has given a lot of hope for the gap that we thought it existed. Thank you so much, Malka, Atif, and Trilog. Please thank my panelists as we move to the next session.
And a big round of applause, please, for Brooke. Thanks, Brooke, for anchoring this panel so beautifully. May I ask all the speakers to come to the front for a group photograph? Round of applause, please, for Brooke, Melka, Trilok, and Atif for setting the stage on one of the most exciting topics for Africa and for the rest of the world. Yeah, right in the front. And those of you who are tweeting or putting posts on LinkedIn and other social media, the hashtag is #ADT2025. Thank you all. Thanks again for a panel. Thanks, Brooke. Thanks, Melka, thanks, Trilok, and thanks, Atif. Thank you. We now move to another very exciting and engaging format for this session. We're going to have a fireside chat now. Let me invite Wim from Safaricom to please come up on stage. And joining him is going to be Adrian Hall. Adrian, will you also please come up, the CEO of Extensia? We're going to have a conversation now on what's happening in this whole space of telecom, connectivity, ICTs, development, inclusion, financial services, and so on and so forth. So a big round of applause for our second session now after the keynote. This is a fireside chat between Wim and Adrian on operator perspectives on national priorities. Round of applause, please, for Adrian and Wim. Thanks, Adrian. Over to you. Thanks, Adrian.
Before we start our conversation, Wim, I'd just like to recognise that your experience in the marketplace, just for the benefit of everybody who isn't aware. Wim has been with Safaricom since 2023. In fact, he's been in the industry for 25 years and a little bit more, but we obviously don't look old enough to have been there for that long. In the industry, senior positions have been held by Wim in the MTN Group, where he's governed 4 operators or 4 operations across West Africa and Central Africa. He's been the CEO of Uganda, MTN, and the CEO of Ivory Coast. He's been the CEO of Centel in Senegal, the MD of Chad, and Chad Mobile in Chad, of course, and then the GM of Telecel in Gabon. So quite a history you've had, and I guess there's more to that as well. The importance of that is that Wim has not only been pioneering a very challenging stage of development in Ethiopia's telecoms growth, being the newcomer in the market, which has been for many, many years run by a single state entity, Ethio Telecom. And so coming in as a newcomer to a marketplace which has a company that has been there since time immemorial, really. That's a challenge. However, with your background, it's a challenge that you're certainly up to. And it's certainly, I think, not an unusual situation for yourself to be in terms of being the newcomer into the marketplace, because you've been the dominant player in the marketplace in other countries as well. So I think it has to be said that from some perspectives, you don't come to this market as a level playing field. Ethio Telecom obviously has the advantage in terms of infrastructure. It has the advantage in terms of subscriber numbers. Business size itself gives them capability to influence the pricing of services to a level at which it may be difficult for you to be effective in the marketplace and financially viable as an entity. But like I said, these are not new things to you. You've been in the position that they are in, and you see from the other perspective that that's just business. However, what I'd like to understand from yourself then, how has it been for Safaricom in terms of a level playing field from all other perspectives, from a policy perspective, regulatory perspective? And I ask this question from the context of Ethiopia wants a third operator into the country at some point. So how would you, if you were to say to the ECA or to Mint, look, we've been here for 3 years, and these are the challenges that we found beyond those that we know are commercial challenges. And we need, if you want to encourage another operator into the country, I think you're going to have to do something in these areas. What are those areas that you would suggest to them could be improved in terms of being encouraging to another operator?
Thanks for that question. I felt old when you introduced me, thinking about all those countries that I've been. I would say to regulator, to minister, to generally, the government stakeholders, we are halfway on the journey. We are halfway. This journey, which started 4 or 5 years ago, there's been a journey, or even more. Here, we've been on this kind of conference 10 or more years ago, so probably that journey actually started even earlier than 3 or 4 years ago. But on the journey of, full liberalization, level playing field, creating the right environment to have a third operator, and also a vibrant ecosystem around it. It's not just about the third operator. It's also about the ecosystem, about data centers, about fiber core, tower core, all kind of other, enablers that the country or the industry, would propel upward. I think we're halfway on that journey. A lot has been done. Okay, let's recognize a lot has been done. The mere fact that we are here, that I'm sitting here now, is evidence of the journey that has already taken place. Opening up the sector, allowing a second and originally also a third operator to enter the market, after 130 years of monopoly, is not a easy thing to do. You can't just take that for granted and think that you pass a law in parliament, you put a signature, and then all of a sudden, day overnight, you will have a completely new, fully open telco industry or environment. It doesn't work like that. So I think we're halfway. A lot of legislative work has been done. A lot of regulatory framework is in place. I just want to remind the audience, the ECA passed some regulation last year, in May last year, around the MTR. They also passed regulation around the SMP, significant market power. So the regulatory framework is there. Okay, the implementation or the accelerated implementation of some of the concrete measures that go with the policies is not yet fully there. Okay, so that is the halfway point, I would say, to somebody else who would say want to come, and we are favorable for a third operator. So don't get me wrong, I would love to have a country of 130, 135 million people. deserves more than 3, even 4 operators. Why not? So we are favorable to that. But there are some things that are missing, which is concrete measures that are provided for in the regulatory framework that have not yet been fully implemented, especially when it comes to SMP. There are SMP measures that are required on the retail side. There are also SMP measures required on the wholesale side. What you were referring to, leasing towers, leasing infrastructure, capacity, that is on the wholesale side, ducts, to pull your fiber cables on the wholesale side, but also on the retail side. The framework provides for specific measures, and we are waiting, would I say, for the regulator to take action and actually implement those measures.
Excellent. Very good answer, and thank you for that. So you're confident in the progress that has been made and the progress that will be made, because I think we can all see in Ethiopia there's progress is the byword for development of the industry. We're seeing a lot of, and as you quite rightly said, it can't be done overnight. There's a big machine to turn around. From Safaricom's perspective and from your growth perspective, how have you found it in terms of the engagement with, for instance, government clients, business clients? You have you feel a to develop services that you. Let me put it another way. As a new kid in town, as it were, you have the disadvantage, but as a new kid in town, you have the advantage. You're more agile, and you can turn quicker to the needs of the market. What have you seen as a direction for Safaricom to take that differentiates you from Ethio Telecom, which has its market dominance naturally? But where do you see, without giving market secrets away, of course, where do you see your growth and development and your uniqueness in the marketplace?
Well, our unique value proposition is that we fully onto the mobile data market. Okay, we didn't invest, we didn't pay a license, $850 million to invest, build a network of now more than $1.5 billion we've invested in the network. We didn't do that just to offer basic voice and SMS. Okay, we did that because we believe the real opportunity is in terms of reliable, fast, available 4G, relatively high speed. Dr. Sund was talking about 20 Mbps. Okay, if we can get 5 or 10, we're already in a good space with 4G. But that is the business opportunity that we saw. And that is what we are leveraging and that we are heavily investing in and working on every day with my team, Safaricom team, is to deliver that promise of fast, reliable, and available mobile data connectivity. That is what we are here for, and that is what is working, because we're growing customer base every day. We're almost at 8 million now. It's small compared to the 135 million people that are in the country, but we are growing, and that is what we have. Our big bet was on 4G mobile data, and it is working, and we will just continue doing that. We only have 50% of the population covered by now, okay, with 3,000 sites. So we also on there, we're only halfway in terms of the investment, not even halfway, okay, because you still need to invest much more in the latter years. But our big bet in terms of where we've made an impact in the market is on fast, reliable 4G mobile connectivity.
That's interesting, and it's good. Thanks for sharing that. That's the strategy. What was your driver for that? What did you see as the opportunity in the market in terms of use cases? What is so I presume that strategy was right from the start, and you know that when you have a strategy and then you move into the actual execution of the strategy, the map is not the reality. as they say. So you've started with the implementation of 4G, presumably with specific use cases in mind. What use cases did you see that drove you to that decision, and what has been the consequence so far of looking at those use cases? Have they been, are you meeting those objectives? Have those objectives changed? Are use cases changing now because of the development of things like AI that's just been discussed and other areas in technology development? Is this still the same strategy that will take you forward further, or do you need to progress differently?
No, the use cases that were there that we planned for 3 or 4 years ago when we made our business case to enter the market have not fundamentally changed. People still need, first and foremost, connectivity. Okay? If you don't have the network covering you, then you're not even in the game. After you have the network, you need to have the device, then you need to have the affordability. I mean, there are quite a number of additional enablers, but the basic business case is to create or to enable connectivity. And what has changed compared to a few years ago is that the dynamics of the market, okay, and particularly the pricing dynamics of the market. What I'm going to say, many people will not like it, but when you tell the truth, you can sleep well at night because it is the truth. We are very proud that we have the cheapest mobile internet in the world, okay, almost. It's the wrong thing to be proud about, okay, because less than 50% of the population is covered by fast mobile internet. Okay, and so I think the presentation that was made by the doctor from Sweden, I think is the most important presentation of the day, probably even the one for tomorrow, because the pain point that we have to face is there is a massive infrastructure connectivity gap. The requirement to invest in infrastructure in Ethiopia, we have estimated it as an industry for the next 2 to 3 years, at least $4 to $5 billion, at least. Okay, I stand to be corrected. I would love to see the report. Probably it's more than that. Now, for a company, whether you're a state-owned company or your private company, it doesn't change. For a company to take on an investment of $3 or $4 or $5 billion, you need to have a viable business model. Okay, otherwise nobody can invest. You can go to the bank, and the bank will ask you, "How are you going to pay back my loan?" Okay, so you have to be in a viable business model, in a viable industry. Today, the mobile data industry in Ethiopia is not viable, okay, because we have made it very cheap for rich people. Okay, we've made it still expensive for the less fortunate people, and we have no network available. We're not even talking about closing the rural gap. We have less than 50% of the population who have a network. So we still have to do a lot of the basic infrastructures. We need 15, maybe 20,000 telco towers on top of what we currently have as a country. I'm not talking about as an operator, as a country. 15 to 20,000 towers. That is on its own $3 or $4 billion. We need another 1 billion at least in fixed infrastructure. It's not just about mobile only. Also the fixed infrastructure requires a lot of additional investment. So we are in this paradox. It is cheap internet, but it is not affordable because you can only get access to it if you buy, a 1,000 beer package or a 5,000 beer package, which most people, 95% of the population, can never afford in a month or in a year. So we have a paradox that we need to correct. Otherwise, the necessary investment required in infrastructure cannot happen. And that is the fundamental difference between the actual reality we're living in today versus the plan that we had 3 or 4 years ago. Okay, we need to go back to a viable economic model, which today is not the case.
So that being the case, and rural being something that does need to be resolved, and the other 50% connectivity needs to be solved, if you had a magic wand and you could solve that, would you do that through economic means, as in, universal service fund kind of approaches where the government contributes towards the infrastructure in uneconomical areas? Would you do it through collaborations and partnerships? Maybe our friend Elon Musk would lend you his Starlink satellites to be able to connect rural areas without the infrastructure. But in all reality, there are companies, there are satellite operators, there are new developments in technology which do enable operators to reduce their costs, maybe tower cos. There's a number of different approaches to it, and I know that you've analysed and looked at the options. What's the barriers that you're facing? Are they can they be mitigated by policy or regulation or by any other means? What do you think is the way forward?
We need a combination of all of the above, everything that you have mentioned. We need independent tower cores, fiber cores. We need alternative technologies. Ethiopia is a big country, 1.1 million square kilometers. You have massive areas of very low densely populated. So you need alternative, different technology. If you really want 100% coverage, you have to be extremely creative in terms of the technical solution. You have to be very creative in terms of the financial solution. And so, are there alternative financing models through grants, through very long-term loans, through all kind of different revenue sharing models with tower cos or rural cos? So we will have to be extremely creative on all different aspects, commercially, financially, technically, even in terms of policy. We will have to be very creative. Otherwise, I don't think it will be possible. So that's the challenge I really see for us as an industry, together with policymakers and together with investors who have the appetite, and the appetite to invest in Ethiopia is extremely high, but all of that needs to come together for it to work. It's not one company or one policy or one technical solution that will all of a sudden again change everything. It will be a very complex combination of all of the above for it to work. But I believe in it because a country 130 million, only Nigeria, we are number two. So the opportunity to invest is massive. Okay, and so we just need to get that appetite back, like maybe 5 years ago when 5 or 10 big of the big multinational telcos were sitting here on this stage and saying, "I want to invest in Ethiopia." We need those guys also to come back, not just to compete with me and with Ethiotel, but also in forms of tower cos and other investors to make this happen. Technology has changed a lot, but the appetite to invest is there. We just need to create the right framework that everybody has the same enthusiasm today like they had 5 years ago. I think a bit of the enthusiasm from a telco ecosystem to invest in Ethiopia has reduced compared to what it was 5 years ago. We need to bring that appetite back, for us to really get to the next level where we want to be.
I agree. And hopefully the people we have in the audience here can support in that objective. And certainly from an Extensia perspective, we're always willing and happy to support in bringing that kind of initiative to Ethiopia. And we've seen over the years that we've been supporting this event and hosting this event, working with the ministry, the appetite is there. It's an alignment of objectives, I think, and I think with people like yourself advocating for that to happen, I think that will go a long way towards making it happen. With regards to 4G and data, mobile data, when we're talking about rural, and I've spoken about this on many previous events, do they need 4G? Do they need isn't a 2G connection enough in the?
No. Everybody is entitled to 4G. Whether you live you live anywhere in the desert of Afar, every Ethiopian, like every citizen of this world, is entitled, has a right. For me, it's almost a human right to have reliable 4G connectivity, because otherwise you will be left behind. And we don't want anybody on this globe, I feel, should be left behind. We cannot aspire to, a digital economy, a digital world, all these AI, what, it will not happen if you don't have coverage and if you don't have a handset. That's the other very big enabler. It's not just about building the infrastructure. Having an infrastructure and nobody has a handset to connect to it, doesn't also serve any purpose. So those are the two key enablers. And it's my conviction. I've been on this continent for 27 years working in this industry. Everybody is entitled to it. In the early days in Gabon, I started in 1998. Okay, internet wasn't even there in terms of mobile. It was just to call. And we were calling at $1 a minute, we were charging, okay, excessively expensive compared to what the standard is now. But from that moment, it became clear for me everybody is entitled to get that connectivity because the world is moving on. Without digital connectivity, mobile connectivity, you will be left behind. And I don't think we want anybody to be left behind.
That is a very good point, and I see a lot of passion there in that response, and that's great to see. So there is a question around beyond the service in terms of ICT literacy, for instance. There's a lot of people in Ethiopia. If you said you should have 4G, you deserve it. It's there, and it's a right for you to have that. They might say, well, I don't use it now. I've never used it before. What do I want it for? Can you give maybe the audience some ideas of what these use cases?
Like telling to my team, you don't know what you don't know. Okay? So ICT digital literacy is something that comes with having the network, having the device, and then having the applications. When I hear the ambitions of the government about e-government, digital Ethiopia, it's a necessity. Okay? And once people will get into that way of life, of digital life, there is no way back. There is no way back. Once you have tasted the digital life, nobody goes back to where it was before. So it is a journey, yes, of course. But like Atif, my CTIO was telling, maybe we need to invest in much more verbal, oral interactions. In Africa, in general, is a very oral society. People talk a lot, interact through talking, not through sending SMSs, WhatsApp, written, so maybe there are opportunities to get so many more people into the digital economy or the digital lifestyle or the digital life in general, if we focus more on oral interactions with our devices, not just about sending text or USSD. So I think the opportunity to get everybody on board, every new product or service that we develop, I ask for the grandmother test. The grandmother test is very simple. You have this new product and service. You ask yourself, would your grandmother in the village be able to use it? If the answer is yes, it's a good product. If the answer is no, throw it out because we don't want it. Okay, so the grandmother test is very important. And with the right technologies, I think it is possible to keep everybody on board to be able to get those access to those digital services and digital entertainment and lifestyle and education and healthcare and you name it. All of that will be possible for everybody if we apply the right technologies.
I like that. I like the grandma test. That's exactly what I was thinking. Actually, I was thinking my mum has an iPad and she uses it, but she's got a computer and she doesn't use it. She doesn't know what to do with it. But her iPad, she looks on social media, she sees what's happening, and she can speak to people on it. It's exactly what you said.
You see, grandmother test is literally, in my case, it's my children who taught my mother how to use WhatsApp. And she is connected, or she passed away a few months ago, but she was connected with her 7 grandchildren on a permanent basis through WhatsApp at the age of 82 or 85. So nobody will be left behind.
So you must be at least 10 steps ahead of everybody else. Given your position, your role, your objectives, you must have an eye on the future and be preparing Safaricom to deliver that future. What do you think are the services that will be adopted in Ethiopia that are not currently ubiquitous, but they may be starting to take hold? Do you think AI is going to be a big development in the country? What would its use cases be in? Would it be in healthcare, education, finance? Where's the next steps for Ethiopia? Where do you see Ethiopia's digital growth?
The good thing about being in Ethiopia or in Africa in general is that you have reference points which allow you to leapfrog. Okay. Don't go on the same journey as the ones that have done the journey already done. Don't go on that same journey. Leapfrog. I heard it earlier this morning. The key word in this is leapfrog. Okay? You don't have to do step-by-step development. You need to leapfrog. And so what digital industry or digital infrastructure allows you is to jump. Is to jump, is to skip 20 years or 30 years or 50 years. Okay? Like here, we buy electric vehicles. I don't think there's a country that promotes electrical vehicles as much as Ethiopia. You're leapfrogging. Forget about buying second-hand cars from Japan with dirty engines. You leapfrog straight away into electrical vehicles. You skip one step. Okay, like energy, green energy. Very passionate about that. We've leapfrogged straight into green energy. The rest of the world is, we should switch off coal centrals and we have to go to wind and solar and this and that. We've leapfrogged. We're straight into hydro, 100% green energy. So we also on the telco side and all the other applications leapfrog. You go from minimal healthcare to e-healthcare. Okay, you don't have to build the hospital. If there is no hospital in Afar, it's okay. We go straight to e-health. You don't have to build it in between. Okay, leapfrog. I'm not saying that's what we need to do, but I mean, I'm giving the example of leapfrogging and not having to follow step by step like maybe other countries have followed. Technology allows you to skip a few steps. And I think, I mean, the reference point for us is not Europe, is not China, is not the US. My preferred reference point of where you see what is possible within the digital economy or the digital infrastructure is Southeast Asia. It's India, Pakistan, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia. Indonesia is an amazing country, 240 million people, and they have leapfrogged. You go, the applications, the services, everything is digital. Operators in Indonesia have 99% of their revenue coming from data. So we're talking about, voice, will it die? Well, in Indonesia, voice is already dead, and the operators are doing very well. Okay, so they have embraced digital technology to make it, relevant for 240 million people living in Indonesia and using digital services, whether it is payments or healthcare or agriculture. I mean, the opportunities are just endless. And I don't see any reason why in Ethiopia we would also not be able, to leapfrog on some of those things. Don't follow the traditional way, step by step, but just jump into the digital area. And then, as Atifa said, the talent that we have in Ethiopia is just amazing. Shows some of this great talent actually in the room today. The talent, the technology talent that we have in Ethiopia is massive, massive. So they will figure it out. It's not for me, I'm old guy now. I'm just counting down to retirement. Huh? So it is the young people who will find the solution. The Ethiopians will find solutions to Ethiopia's problems. It's nobody else. And if you create the right environment, you encourage them, you create the opportunity for them to monetize, to explore their ideas, to bring them to market, they will figure it out. You don't have to worry about that. There's very smart people here who know how to solve the problems that they are facing today.
That's very true, actually. I know myself living in the UK, technology is kind of a nice to have. It's okay. It's good. It helps you. It makes things a little bit easier. In Africa, it's essential. So it's a different environment, and you can't just follow the trends of countries that are at a different stage of development because they're different things. I'm enjoying this conversation, and I almost forgot we've got an audience. I know I'm ignoring it. I'm looking this way. Madan, have we got time for some questions from the audience?
Maybe one question. Yeah, sure.
There's a hand up already. It has to go to the first hand up,
The
surely.
back bench. The
Please.
smartest people in the world on the back bench. No offense intended to the front benches. Yeah, please. Tell us who you are and let's have your question.
Yes, thank you for a wonderful talk. This is a question for Wim. Wim, you clearly come from a very long, many years of experience in the telco industry. I don't know how long you've been in Ethiopia, but I would like you to tell us from your feeling and your experience in Ethiopia so far, where are we on the spectrum before the let's say the startup community, the apps, the applications, and uh, the private sector is going to reach a tipping point and things will start happening in Ethiopia. Where are we on that spectrum? Sorry, I forgot to introduce my name. My name is Omar. I come from DSTV, Ethiopia. Thank you.
Okay, so where are we? Well, we are in a good space. Okay. Why I think we're in a good space is the human talent is there, undoubtedly. I was talking to somebody in Nigeria the other day, and they actually subcontract software development to a company here out of Addis. Okay. So for a Nigerian to admit that they're working with somebody in Addis, so it's not just like we have outsourcing services to US or India or other company or other countries, which is already the case. Uh, the talent is here that we even do outsourcing or do services for other countries in Africa. Our mother company in Kenya, Safaricom in Kenya, we have the ecosystem around the invention around M-Pesa, the fintech, and all of that. I think they keep talking about Silicon Valley. And the fancy word is the Great Rift Valley, the Great Rift Valley that the opportunity is there. I do believe it is there. Okay, the potential is not the problem. The human resource is not the problem. I think we just need click, to bring us to your earlier question, to bring all the players, the actors into on the scene, to bring them all together and to really understand what are the 1, 2, 3 things that need to happen, most likely from a policy point of view, to unlock that potential. Potential is not the problem. It is how do we unlock it so that we can really rise to the potential that we believe is really there. So everything is there, but we haven't unlocked that magic enabler to really accelerate it. And I don't have the solution to it. Okay. Despite many years of experience, I have to disappoint you. I also, apart from collaborating and getting everybody around the table and really being focused, I think the solution will have to come from there. How to unlock it.
I think it's talking that will unlock it in environments like this. And there's always somebody who has something that they can contribute, which unless you give them the platform like this event, that doesn't happen. So events like this, and I would say it obviously, but events like this are important to ignite that debate, ignite those discussions, and connect those people. And Wim, I've really enjoyed our chat. Appreciate your openness. You did say to me earlier today that just ask whatever you want. So I had some questions. I ignored them. I asked what I wanted, and you answered perfectly. And I thank you very much for that. Thank you. Please, a big round of applause for Wim.
Thanks, Wim. Thanks, Adrian. A big round of applause, please, for Adrian and Wim. And may I request both of you to come to the front for a group photograph? And Wim, don't worry about retirement. You're young at heart. That's